The hills of Bethlehem echoed with the sound of bleating sheep, a serene and timeless melody that filled the air. A young boy named David watched over his flock with a keen eye and a gentle hand. Though he was small in stature, he possessed a bravery that belied his years. He had faced and protected his sheep from the ferocious attacks of lions and bears, never once backing down. In the quiet moments, he played his harp and sang songs of praise to God, his melodies blending with the whispers of the wind. David's love for the Lord was evident in every note he played and every word he sang, a devotion that shone brightly in his heart. Meanwhile, David's older brothers were soldiers in King Saul's army, marching with purpose and determination. They were strong, experienced warriors, seasoned by the trials of battle. In contrast, David was just a shepherd boy, tending to his flock in the fields, but God saw something special in David, something that others might have overlooked. He saw David's courage, his unwavering faith, and the purity of his heart. One day, David's father Jesse called him and sent him to the battlefield with provisions for his brothers. David was to bring back news of his brothers' well-being and deliver food to sustain them. Little did David know that this seemingly simple journey would change his life forever, setting him on a path of destiny. He was about to face a giant, a challenge that would test his faith and courage and ultimately fulfill God's divine plan for him. The Israelites were at war with the Philistines, a fierce and relentless enemy. The two armies stood facing each other across a valley, the tension palpable in the air. A giant named Goliath, a warrior of immense strength and size, came out from the Philistine ranks. He was huge and terrifying, clad in armor and carrying massive weapons. Goliath challenged the Israelites with a booming voice. He roared, "Send out a man to fight me! If he kills me, we will be your slaves!" He continued, his voice echoing through the valley. "But if I win, you will be our slaves." The Israelites were terrified, their hearts gripped by fear. No one dared to face Goliath. The sight of him alone was enough to send shivers down their spines. David, a young shepherd, arrived at the camp and heard Goliath's challenge. He was indignant and could not believe the audacity of the giant. "How dare this giant defy the living God?" he thought, his heart burning with righteous anger. David's heart burned with courage and determination. He knew that this was a battle not just of strength but of faith. He declared with unwavering resolve, "I will fight him." King Saul was skeptical, doubting the young shepherd's ability to face such a formidable foe, but David insisted. He knew that God was with him and that faith gave him the strength to stand against the giant. David refused to wear Saul's heavy armor. He knew that the weight and bulk of the armor would hinder his agility and speed, which were his greatest assets. Instead, he chose to rely on his own skills and the tools he was familiar with. He picked up his shepherd's staff, 5 smooth stones, and his sling. These were the tools of a shepherd, not a warrior, but David had used them to protect his flock from predators many times before. He approached Goliath with the confidence of a lion. Each step he took was filled with purpose and determination, his faith unwavering. Goliath laughed at the sight of the young boy. To him, David was nothing more than a child, an insignificant opponent, unworthy of his time. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" His voice boomed across the battlefield, but David stood firm, unshaken by the giant's taunts. He shouted back, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." His voice was filled with conviction, echoing his unyielding faith. With a swift motion, David launched a stone from his sling. His movements were precise and practiced, honed by years of protecting his sheep. It flew straight and true, sinking into Goliath's forehead. The impact was immediate and devastating, a testament to David's skill and accuracy. The giant stumbled and fell, shaking the ground. The mighty warrior who had terrorized the Israelites was brought down by a single stone. David had defeated the Philistine champion. His victory was not just a personal triumph, but a symbol of faith and courage. The Philistines were routed and the Israelites were victorious. The battlefield echoed with the cheers and shouts of the triumphant Israelites. David had become a hero, His bravery and faith had turned the tide of battle, and he was celebrated by his people as a true champion. David's victory over Goliath earned him the admiration of the people and the friendship of Jonathan, King Saul's son. Jonathan and David became as close as brothers. They promised to always protect and support each other. However, David's fame filled King Saul with envy and fear. Saul saw David as a threat to his throne. He plotted to kill David, but Jonathan warned his friend and helped him escape. Despite Saul's persecution, David remained loyal. He refused to harm God's anointed king, even when he had the opportunity. David's heart was filled with integrity and faith, even in the face of danger. Saul relentlessly pursued David, forcing him to live as a fugitive. David and his loyal followers hid in caves and deserts, constantly on the move. Despite the hardships, David never lost faith. He continued to trust in God's protection and guidance. He even spared Saul's life twice, proving his respect for God's chosen leader. David's time on the run was a period of refining. He learned to depend on God even more. He grew in wisdom and leadership, preparing for the day he would become king. After Saul's death, David was crowned king of Judah. Later he became king over all of Israel. He united the tribes, defeated their enemies, and expanded the kingdom. David proved to be a wise and just ruler, loved by his people. He built Jerusalem into a magnificent capital city. David's reign was not without its challenges. He faced internal conflicts and rebellions, yet he always sought to follow God's will. He established a legacy of worship and obedience that would influence generations to come. Despite his successes, David remained humble. He acknowledged his weaknesses and repented of his sins. He poured out his heart to God in psalms of praise, lament, and repentance. David's life was not perfect, but his heart yearned for God. He desired to please God in all he did. His relationship with God was the source of his strength and his inspiration. David's life teaches us that God can use anyone, even a shepherd boy, to fulfill his purposes. God sees our hearts, not our outward appearances. He chooses those who are humble and obedient, those who trust in him completely. David's story is an inspiration for all ages. He teaches us about courage, faith, loyalty, and leadership. He reminds us that with God, all things are possible. Even when facing giants, we can stand firm, knowing that God is on our side. David's legacy lives on through his descendants, including Jesus Christ, the ultimate King. Like David, we are called to be people after God's own heart. We may face giants in our own lives, but we can overcome them through faith, courage, and an unwavering trust in God.